Now is the time. A time you'll look back on. A time you adopt as inspiration. You will recollect this time. This moment, right now. Motivate yourself towards success. Overcome. Take over. The time is now.
Hello, hello, hello! We are back. We're back. Hey, Pete.
How are you? How you doing?
Not too bad, Pete.
I literally during that intro, I was just finishing my last little bits of marking.
Every little bit.
Put away, bang! Here we go. I love
it. Did they get a good mark? I hope they got a good mark now.
It was all right, actually. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Nice one. Yeah, so we're back. Just myself and Pete tonight. And Mitch, of course. Mitch is in the green room. We're going to get him out in a second. Just a shout out to Richie, who's Richie and Caroline. It's their anniversary today. So congratulations to Richie and Caroline. And to Martin. And it was Martin's wife's Rhoda's birthday as well during the week. Happy birthday. And yeah, Martin's off sunning himself, as you have seen from the pictures the other night. So, but he might drop on, you never know. But you know, Martin, he does what he wants. But yeah, how's things with you, Pete?
Well, I was touching on whether I was going to be on tonight because I've not been well since sort of Monday night, Tuesday morning. But yeah, I managed to start to feel a bit better this afternoon. So I thought, yeah, how can I miss the dentist chair? How can I miss the main man coming on and talking all things Newcastle United? So yeah, I'm glad to be on. How about you?
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I the last show was brilliant with Mitch. I did watch it back, and then the next day or the day after that, like, because you miss so much, you just pick up little nuggets. We just kind of, it was cool the way we just went in different tangents, so we could go anywhere. So how about we start that off again? And we bring on Mitch. So, hey, are we still all good?
All right, lads.
How you doing,
all right, Mitch? How's it going?
All good, man. All good. I've just flown back home from work. I just did Geordie's here. Geordie's there on NUFC matters at work, and then decided also that I should just about time to fly home and speak to you guys. So that's what I've been able to do, thankfully. You just never know with the vagaries of evening traffic during Ramadan, sort of. It's a bit bizarre, but you get used to it.
Definitely. We'll just talk about the weather as well, because you said the weather over there is starting to pick up a little bit.
Starting to creep. 41 degrees on the car at lunchtime when I went to take it back there, because I had to pick my car up and drop the replacement car off because it's been in for service. And it was 41, 42 degrees on the dash at lunchtime, and you just think, yeah, it's starting to creep up again here.
Nice. Well, not so nice. Bearable, a bit less than that's a bit bearable. But where should we start tonight? I guess.
Well, you know what, Daz? Obviously, the last time we had Mitch on, we're going through a little bit of a dry patch in terms of results with Newcastle United. 3 losses on the bounce. However, since then, 4 wins in a row. And we are flying high. Eddie Howe, 9th place. Eddie Howe's Mags flying high. Mitch, come on. What are your thoughts after this run of results?
I think we talked about the 3 defeats we had, and we talked about margins. And really, in the defeat to Chelsea, we should have beaten Chelsea.
Yeah.
But for a iffy VAR decision in a probable sending off, we should have beaten Chelsea. Everton got done by a sucker punch after some dickhead taped himself to the bloody post. I think that totally distracted us. I think we lost all of the flow that we had, and I think they benefited from it, and we felt it was sucker punch against them. And the only game really we got outdone in was Tottenham. We got tactically outdone chasing the game in the second half. Out of those 3 games, there was probably only 47, 48 bad minutes in total. There's your margins. Then you come to the next 4 games, and where's our margins? Our margins are swinging in the other way. Have we really changed the way we played too much? No, not really. I think we've stuck with a plan, we've stuck with a format, we've stuck with a style. Personnel-wise, there hasn't been too much of a shake-up other than in the last game. Because, hey, why not? Because you could, and because we've got a big game coming up this weekend, so why not rest a few potentially tired legs? I think that was smart. It's also chucking out a definite marker there. Anybody who's been on the fringes, do you want to be part of the football revolution going forward, or is it time to help you out the door? And they will decide for Eddie Howe in the next few games. I'm sure as people get rotated in and out, he's got an opportunity to have a look at a few different looks and a few different people in different positions. I think he's been quite smart with that. You can't fault. I tell you what, in the games though, we've shown that we can win in different ways as well. And that's the marker of a good team. We've ground the result out against Palace, really. We ground that out second half. I think we deserve better against Wolves. And we were scintillating against Norwich. Yeah. And you know, you couldn't get probably 3 different types of win in those 3 games. But yet, at the end of the day, that's what good teams do. Yeah. And does ever anybody look back in the history books and say, oh, well, you know, Man United won the title, but against that team they were pretty rubbish, and yet they squeaked a 1-0 win at the end? Nobody ever looks at that. No. At the end of this day, only anybody ever looks at is the record books. What was the score? Where did you finish in the league? And that's all that's permanent. Everything else is very, very fleeting and temporary. And so I think this is what has impressed me is we've shown that we've got a bit of depth and dimension in terms of how we can play and the way we can play. And it's given a platform for Bruno to be centre stage. And I think if the one thing that comes out of the last few games is next season we have to build a team around that man.
You know what, Mitch, and I'm sure Daz, you'll agree with this. We discussed this in a little bit of detail about Bruno Guimaraes during the transfer window as a transfer was coming about. My brother, who's a French journalist, came onto Loaded and was talking about Bruno Guimaraes in a little bit of detail. And one of the things that he kind of talked about and has talked about with me is that he's a competitor. He demands to be the best in everything that he does, whether it's training, whether it's in matches, whether it's just like a little five-a-side game. He has that competitiveness in that. What's been really clear to see and what we're hearing as well, whether it's, you know, local journalists or whether it's just people in general, or even players in his own team, are saying that he's got that competitive nature. I think Eddie Howe mentioned it in his press conference. He talked about how... Go on. Sorry.
He looks like a really lovely guy, but he does also look like someone who would quite happily lace an 8-year-old on a ping pong table. You know, because I want to win. And he's got that in him. You can see it. You can see how he interacts with the players. But also he isn't... some players will bollock other players when things don't go right. He seems to encourage, and I think that's a sign of a great leader on the pitch, even though he's not necessarily going to have an armband, I don't think. You need leaders, and he's that kind of leader, a leader who will encourage and bring people up, not bollocking them and sitting them down. You know, like I say, he'd probably lace an 8-year-old on a ping pong table and then spend an hour with him after showing him how he could be better. You know, and it's that kind of personality. And you need somebody like that in any squad, but to have him as the main man. Some of the balls, when you look at some of the things he does in slow motion, are genuine next level. And I don't think you can teach some of them things. I think some of them things are the innate things that certain, special individuals can do. You know, I don't think Gaza was ever taught some of the things were his trademarks. I think he just did them always from a teenager. And I think Bruno, some of the things he's doing there, they have not been taught. That's just him.
Yeah, just ingrained into their personality. He's been a super talent. Daz, you know, from your point of view, like, you know, what's been kind of the kind of standout thing that you've noticed about Bruno since he's come into the team?
Yeah, I think we talked about it in a couple of different reaction shows. It's really just his calmness on the ball. He's always like 2 steps ahead of everybody else. He's always kind of thinking. He's, as you said, he's so clever. Like, you know, even when you think if it was anyone else, you'd think, okay, they're going to lose the ball in that position, but no, not even a bother on him. He will just turn, spin, and pass it off. No hassle. Like, it's just the class. It's just that we're not used to seeing a player of that ability. Definitely not in Newcastle, and even in the Premier League, he's stand out. And just as well, reading some of the things today about how the owners sold the club to him. Like they said, okay, objective 1, keep us in the Premier League. Objective 2, we're going to challenge for the Premier League and the Champions League. And that kind of links into what we're talking about ourselves about how long is it going to take us to move up the table. But he's been sold that, and he'll want players of similar ability in with them in the summer, and not all in one go, but to see a project building. So again, I'm sick of saying, but it will be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. I think one of the things we're going to have to be very careful of, it's started already. There's a lot of the white noise generated by agents, generated by other clubs, generated by people associated with other players. The name Newcastle United will be very easy to tag in any transfer story, even just to try and bump the transfer price up a little bit for somebody somewhere. And so I think we've got, as a fan base, we've got to be careful to understand that probably 99% of what comes out over the summer is going to be dross.
Yeah, same as January.
It's just going to be tripe, and we've got it. What we can do, though, is have fun with it. Let's have fun with it for once, you know. It's great to be being talked about in that kind of tone, instead of who's the bargain basement signing we're going to pick up on a free at the end of the season, you know, who we're going to not sign right on deadline day, and things like that. I think it's that kind of experience that we've not had for a long time. Yeah. There's a generation of our fans haven't really experienced that excitement. And people are going to get carried away, and people are going to get lifted by it, and that's fine. Let them. Let's get carried away for once. It's part of the joy of football. I think as well, you can see that there's intent, and the intent from the owners is very clear, and that's being felt over here. I've just been having a quick chat with our lead about how the interest in Newcastle is growing in Saudi. And it genuinely is, and it's genuinely grown in the region. You know, I've got interestingly on the wall of my surgery, I've got a caricature that a patient had done of us, and I'm sat behind like a DJ desk with a black and white shirt on, and people used to point at it and say Juventus. They now point at it and say Newcastle United, and that's not just because they know who I am. My long-term patients always knew it was Newcastle United. I'm talking new patients, people who don't know us from Adam. People who aren't necessarily British or English, they'll point at a shirt and go, "Oh, Newcastle United."
Wow.
And that's interesting how that's now filtering into the region. We're going to have to learn to embrace some of what Liverpool, who are playing at the minute, have, which is the day trip I found, the Johnny Come Lately, the person who's recently switched from Chelsea. We're going to have to learn to embrace that. We really are. And it is what it is. It is how football support in this region works. They'd like to jump on a winning horse, or they follow a big name. So if we sign a big name expecting a flux of people buying Newcastle shirts with that name on the back, it's going to happen. So why should we get cheerless about it? Just because we've been here all this time? We know who we are. We should be comfortable in our skin. Those of us who've been here since day dot shouldn't have any reason to be upset or threatened by a Johnny Come Lately fan. We should just say, you're wearing our colours, come and join the ride. That's it. And I see how that works with some of the Liverpool fans out here, but interestingly, does seem to be a big divide in the Liverpool Supporters Club over here at the moment between Arabic fans and non-Arabic fans. I don't know what's gone on. I've got no interest in the politics of their supporters club, but there's something definitely happened. But it's very much the case that the support is going to change in the region. And going forward, we have a busy summer and we make some big signings. I'm telling you now, we'll pick up a hell of a lot of followers in the Gulf and in Southeast Asia and across the MENA region, totally. It's why personally I would be going hell for leather to sign Salah. Personally.
Really?
If I was PIF, on a basis of you want to make a statement in this region and get shirts sold and get a name made for yourself, that's the player.
Do you think that's realistic though? In terms of,
I've got no idea, mate.
But I mean,
it's in the Mbappe territory, that one.
Realistic in terms of what we do under FFP. It's realistic in the kind of signing that certainly I could see PIF wanting to make. Whether they want to blow the budget on it though, that's a different matter. Might be better to time that for a later date when we've got more to play with, better footed. But it's that kind of signing that would light up the Middle East. Jeez, I find it interesting though that the Egyptian Minister for Sports got involved with it a little bit and has been telling Salah to go and sign for Liverpool again, which would suggest to me somebody else is in his ear telling him to do something different.
Yeah. Well, if it was as cut as dry as he wanted to stay at Liverpool, he'd have signed the contract already by now. I think he's rejected the contract already. So there's clearly a move eyed up. Whether that's a PSG, whether that's a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, or maybe
think that's where it would be.
Yeah, or maybe a Newcastle United. I think he's got another year left on his contract, if I'm right thinking. I thought it was this summer initially that his contract was out, but I think it's 2023. So he's got a year left to kind of wrap that up, or you might see a move in the summer. And it's going to be an interesting. But I think you're right, and it really has Newcastle United. From what you're saying. Certainly in the Middle East, it's got the opportunity, particularly in Saudi, it's got the opportunity to just blow everything out the water in terms of how much backing we're going to get as a football club in that area.
They've got, if I remember the figures right, 30 to 35 million people under the age of 30 in Saudi who would be interested in top class sport. That's a hell of a lot of bodies. Yeah. And that's a big market. And that's before you expand to the wider MENA area, and certainly even if you wanted to just stick to the Gulf area. The ties from Saudi to Bahrain and to the UAE are super strong. And where Saudi go, others tend to follow. I'm hearing some very interesting things coming out of the UAE at the minute, that there may be a lot of commercial interest in supporting Newcastle United from parts of the UAE, i.e. this is the Dubai-Abu Dhabi divide. Why aren't they supporting Man City? And the UAE is a United Arab Emirates when it suits. And the rivalry between Dubai and Abu Dhabi is quite palpable. What an absolute snub to Abu Dhabi it would be if, say, some of the big commercial people who do business with PIF and do business with Saudi were to suddenly turn around and start backing Newcastle United because A, they've already got multiple intertwined businesses that support each other in different regions. And they do a lot of scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, because, well, if you build this mall here for us, well, we'll build that airport there for you, and then we'll do this for you. Who's to say that part of one of those deals would be come and sponsor Newcastle United, the training ground or a sleeve sponsor, and it's somebody from Dubai, and the Premier League can't say it's an associated company, so it gets around that, and it's an absolute thump to the nose to their friends in Abu Dhabi saying we're getting on board with Big Brother's team, not yours. And believe you me, when all of this first started on Amigos, we started talking about the word geopolitics. It's still going to come up because some of the things that happen in terms of sponsorship and interrelationships are still going to be geopolitical. Just some of them are going to be micro geopolitical within the UAE and Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Saudi. You know, but it's how the way the world works over here. And I keep hearing suggestions that the part of the commercial deals are going to be handled out of Dubai for the club rather than necessarily directly from Newcastle. I've heard that from a couple of places who would generally spot on over the whole takeover process, so I've got no reason to doubt it. It's up whether it happens or not, I don't know. Like I say, I've been told that's certainly something they're considering because they've got real big links to big corporations and big companies who have sites across the whole MENA area, and they just really do sort of do this sort of, well, you do this and I'll do this kind of deals. And so it will be easy to get a lot of people involved on the commercial side. And it would be useful in terms of getting around, because you know fine well every commercial deal we do, there'll be, like I said, I think a couple of weeks ago on Amigos, they're not just be going over it with a fine tooth comb, it'll be a nit comb. You know, they'll be looking for every last little dot and comma to try and you know, get a custard pie in my face on it. So the guys are going to have to be super clever about it, and I've got no doubt they will be.
But do you think, and you've made a good point there, because I remember you mentioning it on Amigos about, you know, them going through it with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that everything's in place. But do you think, from the club's point of view, that the reason why it's not been done already is because the club are looking to get as much money out of those deals as absolutely possible as that first set of deal? Because we know later on we'll be able to demand more once we're in a position to command it. But that initial deal, if we can get as much out of that first sponsorship deal as possible, and they've signed it off, it gives us the remit to only go up after that point.
Well, you're looking at tying in with FFP. You're looking at tying it in with accounting periods. You're looking at tying it in with being able to drop certain things at certain times. And obviously you're looking at expansion. What are they going to do about Castoria? I'm still not convinced they're going to be around next season. If they are around next season, I don't think they'll be around beyond that 5-year deal or no 5-year deal. Castoria's actions of late suggest to me a company that's given up, if you ask me. And we've heard very little from them as well. And yet I'm still seeing lots of people buying stuff which is badly printed offline, you know, so squint, even Stevie Wonder could see it was squint, and things like that. And so, you know, that's not what we need. We don't need that as a top line supplier of sporting goods. Not when there's probably people queuing up to want to jump onto our bandwagon now, with the potential markets that could open up. So I think it's an interesting time, and I think that whatever they're doing it with, nothing's a mistake, nothing's a bad timing, everything's absolutely positive, I think. And I think that does for me. I'm happy to trust the process and see where it puts us on the footing and see how many ways we can make the Premier League eat their words.
Mitch, I've got a question here on the sponsorship. And normally, let's say, traditionally, most other clubs, apart from us, would play in their new kit at the last game of the season. So we must be getting to a time now that that kind of information might be getting out, that we know who the sponsor is, who the shirt sponsor or the shirt maker may be, and you know, it can't be too long more. We have to wait before we hear
it can't be. And I believe you've got to get special dispensation to do that, to play in your new kit for the following season. But that's by the by. It seems to become a little bit of a tradition. You're right. You'd think one of the shirt websites would have been leaking something by now, as I noticed. Man City's new away kit got leaked because somebody saw the photo shoot and took some pictures of the photo shoot, and they got out. Man City going back to a black and red away kit next season, allegedly. So yeah, you're right that you'd think there'd be some deal coming out. Funny 88 to stay around is an interesting one, given the current Saudi stance on gambling. I do say current because these things change. It give you a comparison. Dubai now has an MGM hotel. Do you think they're just here for a hotel? Company like MGM? I don't think so either. We know what's coming. And the loophole they'll get around with that is it's on one of the Blue Waters Islands, which is artificial. And they'll suddenly say that all the artificial islands are offshore. And then magically casinos will appear. And, there's always a way around it. Saudi are getting very interested in tourism. I don't for a second believe that Saudi think that they're going to make an absolute fortune off of pure Islamic tourism and having dry tourist resorts. I think that's and don't underestimate how big a cultural change for Saudi Arabia that would be if they were to do a resort for holidays and have bars in it. It would be mega, really, in terms of change. It will be a huge stride, and I personally think it'll happen. And these kind of things will change. So having Funny 88 on the shirt for now is probably not the best fit. My personal feelings, the shirt will be one of two things. It'll either be Saudi, because the airline has no connection to PIF. Yeah. But I believe the favourite is one of the tourism sites, and there's a place called Al Ula, which is a UNESCO heritage site that they want to push as a tourism venue, and I believe something like Experience Al Ula will be what's on the shirt. It'll be something tourism, is my feeling, because that's what they want to drive. They're pushing NEOM and the Red Sea Resort now. That's such a huge project. Again, I don't expect that to be a dry project in the long term. It's the way that it goes, and certainly even when I think about the changes I've seen here in Dubai, I'm sitting talking to you during Ramadan. I can tell you right now, there's people on holiday here who won't even know it's Ramadan. They just won't. Compared to what it was like when I first came here 10 years ago. The difference is massive. Saudi are about 10 to 15 years behind Dubai at the minute in that respect. So, it'll come.
Cool. Just want to give a special shout out to Jimmy there in the chat. I know you're going through a bit of a rough time there, and but I saw some pictures. You got out today for a while, so just a shout out to Jimmy who's in the chat. And I see those of the chatters are getting behind Jimmy as well. There's a question here as well. I want to link in of that Mike put up, and it's linked into it. We've talked about the sponsorships, but it's about the CEO position. Have you heard anything around that topic, Mitch?
The only thing I heard in the last week was a few rejections had been sent out. The people have interviewed with which have had thanks but no thanks. I've been given a couple of names, but I gather one is now out of the running. Both were female. Both still in football. And I know one of them was a particular favourite. But they are also exploring options outside of football. Because I think what they want is they want to be progressive. They want somebody who's going to bring, because if you bring somebody from outside of football, but somebody who has some football basics, is a fan, is interested in football, has grown up with football, but their expertise, their financial expertise is outside of football. They may see things that football CEOs just will never see. And so why not? Why not explore that as an option? Or if you want somebody who is in football, what do you want our CEO to be doing in terms of expansion within and outside of the club, and how do you want them to integrate everything that's going on? Foundation, links to the women's team, growth of the academy, growth of youth, reaching out to supporters, how do you engage with supporters better, etc., etc. So there are some football candidates who will be exceptionally good at doing that. And it really does depend on what you want and what they want. And I'm sure they're going about their business appropriately and fairly. And they'll pick the right person. I'm quite sure of that.
With when there's rejections being handed out, it usually means they've got their eye on someone, or someone's already been given.
It usually means they've at least got a short list.
Yeah,
they've at least got 2 or 3 names which they're going, right, it's one of them.
And naturally, and I don't know if you agree with this, Daz, Mitch, that naturally in my head I'm thinking it only really makes sense to make these appointments outright in the summer. Once this season's done, and we can plan for a new season ahead. And it kind of links in a little bit with a question that I think one or two maybe have asked in the chat, but a question I certainly want to ask is that, do you think that the Dan Ashworth deal will get signed off in the summer? For the same reason, like I said, with the CEO.
My understanding is the compensation drops significantly in the summer.
Right.
At the end of the season, I believe the compensation amount drops, I think, to a point where somebody inside our club would say, actually, yeah, we'll pay that. And I think it's not an insignificant drop in compensation either at the season end. It to me, if the numbers are being given as correct, it would seem to me to be a nonsense not to do the deal. But I don't know if the numbers are being given are correct.
Yeah, and it looks like Brighton are in the process of appointing his successor anyway. So if Brighton are already looking to move on by appointing his successor, then why would they want that still hanging over their head? With the case of him still, is he still at the club? Money. Is he still on guard? It is money, but even so, you just don't want the hassle with that. You want to be able to just kind of cut ties and just move on. You've got your replacement in place. Your replacement wants to just get his head down or she wants to get his head down, whoever they employ, that comes in and gets on with the job. To have that still lingering just adds more confusion to the situation.
That would seem to be a very amicable way to deal with it all, but sadly, time and time again, people in football show that they're not always amicable, they're not always sensible, and they're always very selfish. So, and that's why the Football League clubs couldn't agree at times on how to end the season fairly and equitably, because inevitably self-interest kicks in. That seems to be the nature of the game these days. We're not all in it together. And so... But I would agree with you, Pete, that would seem to be a very sensible and amicable way to do it. And I would have thought Brighton and the way they're owned and the way they're managed come across as generally a fair club to deal with. They don't come across as a bunch of wankers, really. So you'd imagine that they'd be open to fair dialogue and coming to an agreement of sorts, particularly when the compensation drops to a point where, to me, it just seems a nonsense not to do the deal.
I agree.
We've got loads of more questions. Maybe we'll take a few as we're it's like a quarter. We'll go to I won't call that halftime. First quarter. Yeah, I want to ask about maybe Paquetá. What is your thoughts on him? Chris is saying here that Oliver Bernard is saying that we're in talks with him, and everyone else is saying the same thing as well. And we know he's good friends with Bruno. What's your thoughts? Do you think he could end up with us?
if Eddie Howe likes him and he's a good enough player and he fits in with the system and he's going to put a smile on Bruno's face and he's going to create an extra bounce in the dressing room, why the hell not? I'm all for it. I'm all for it. He's the fact he's been over to see his mate, the fact there seems to be a lot of chatter on social media between them all, Joe Linton joining in too. To me, smacks of somebody somewhere wants to move. Somebody somewhere wants this to happen. And often in football, when somebody wants things to happen, it's over to the agents, and the agents can make it happen. To me, I still think agents have far more control in this game than people realise, particularly when it comes to South American players. And I think if he wants it to happen, I think the agents will make it happen. Do I think that's a great fit for the team? Well, does a Brazilian international improve your midfield? Well, usually, unless he's Fred. Hey, what's happened with Brazilian internationals? When I was a kid, they all had wonderful names like Socrates and Falcao, and now it's like Fred and Alan, and Dave. You know, what's happened? What's happened? It used to be mystical. Oh, signed a Brazilian. What's he called? He's called Socrates. Brilliant. Oh, signed a Brazilian. What's he called? Fred.
Or as you said, Alan, who can
same.
Produce two successful passes in one game, and both of them probably from the kickoff.
Just to add on Paquetá, he is the perfect foil for Bruno Guimaraes because just the way in which he links. So if you look at the system that we're playing right now, I don't necessarily foresee a change in the system in terms of how we play, and he would be playing as one of those two further forward midfielders. At the moment, it's Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes. It's playing that role. We know that Bruno can play slightly deeper if Shelby's not available to allow another midfielder like Paquetá to come in. The one thing that Paquetá adds is that he's a box to box. He can get back and defend, but actually he can be a link to the striker. And at times for Leon, he plays as part of maybe a front two sometimes because he's got the ability to get forward. And the reason being is because he can score goals. When he gets the opportunity and he gets the service, that's why Bruno Guimaraes and Paquetá link so well, because they create, but he can score goals as well. And he's a top talented player. I heard, and I don't know how true this is, that he had a €50 million buyout in his contract. Could well be rubbish. I don't know. Get
it done.
It would if that's the case. Yeah, definitely get it done. But even so, I said it a while ago. I don't see Paquetá's transfer fee being much too different to what we paid for Bruno Guimaraes because the very similarity in quality, not necessarily what they do technically. And the key for me is that Leon. A more than likely, probably 80% chance that they're missing out on European football this year, which we know in Ligue 1 is massive for any club like Lyon or Monaco or Marseille. If you miss out in Europe financially, you are screwed.
The other factor is the disaster that is finances in France football, full stop, at the moment. The collapse of the television deal, that being then very cheekily snuck back in and got for pennies after they'd let it go because they knew what was going to happen. It's crippled a lot of clubs. It's why their buyout clauses aren't ridiculous as well. Some of the ways the contracts are structured with buyout clauses, they're much less than what you'd be paying for even, say, a German player or certainly a player in Spain. And because of their ability to attract certain players when teams like Lyon get Champions League football, usually on a regular basis, that's when it comes to biting them on the backside, is when they miss out. When domestically they don't perform so well. And then suddenly they've got to shed a few players because they cannot keep them. So it could be a perfect storm. It could work out to be an ideal fit to pick up a player for relatively cheap money for what he could deliver. If you sign a player for that money and you get another Bruno on your hands, you wouldn't be upset, would you?
Definitely not.
Oh, bring it on. With a serious question.
You can get carried away a bit. We're allowed to now. We've had this joy taken away from us, and they're trying to take it away from us again because by trying to tell us we're kind of be happy because we've got blood on our hands. Sod it. I want to be interested in the football. Let's talk about the football and let us enjoy our football a little bit. Yes, there's loads of other questions we can ask and we can answer, and we can all have a real good chat and powwow about that. But you know what? I'm really enjoying the football at the minute.
I love it. We can have conversations about the club, about our future, in particular transfers. A couple of the Geordie lads that I know that live down south, we've got a chat and there's questions on there, and there was an interesting conversation going on the other day. And there was one lad that was listing players that were like Nunes, Paquetá. There was Jasmine Black in the chat put about Sven Botman. And it was kind of like there was one lad that I think in his opinion was just shutting everything down, or he ain't going to come to us. He's going to go to a Champions League team, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, let's just enjoy it. The other lad was saying, let's just enjoy the fact that we're even linked to these players and there even is a possibility, because there's a real possibility. Yes, there are Champions League clubs available, but with the project that we've got, there is a higher possibility than there ever was before that these top young players could actually come and play for Newcastle United, not in 2 or 3 years' time, but now. And that's the thing. That's what we should be enjoying and discussing and talking about, regardless of what the eventuality actually is. Like you just said, Mitch, it's just great to talk about it.
I was just declaring at the weekend how preposterous our league position is right now. Well, that doesn't help sell to a player who might be interested in coming. You point at the league table and say, but where do we go from there? Once we sign you, and it makes such a bloody big difference. And these are the things that we've sort of forgot along the way a little bit. While we're, we've now got the run to the end of the season. The games we've got are free hits. We can just go out, express ourselves, and just give it a damn good go. And lay down markers for people to say, right, I want to see this out of you, I want to see that out of you. We don't have to risk Trippier, we don't have to risk Wilson if we don't want to, although I'm sure they'd both like to appear before the end of the season. Don't have to risk them, and that we've put ourselves in such a wonderful position going forward that we can talk about plans for next season with a bit of hope, and that's fantastic.
I have 3 questions here. I'm going to switch the order that I was going to put them in. So a link it into the topics we're talking about is first one being, and I'm going to answer this one. Gary asks, here's the question for everyone: which player will we not be able to get over the line? I'm going to say Mitch's Salah. We're not going to be able to get Salah over the line. So sorry, Mitch. But jump in if we can revert back to that. Next question I wanted to bring up was this one, and where is he? Oogie? Oh, there he is. Do you think we'll get a lot of deals wrapped up now and swoop in like we did with Bruno, so we don't get caught up in bidding wars?
I personally think yes, we'll have some in the pipeline, but I also think our approach to this transfer window is going to be very fluid. We'll have groups of players and say, right, we'd like him or him. Whichever one comes will come. And then we'll have players whereby, well, if we have an opportunity to sign this player, do we take the opportunity and blow our budget and then rethink? I think it's going to be, this is why I think we're going to have a hell of a lot of white noise, because I think we're going to have, if how I understand January went, how do I do this without giving too much away?
Give it away, you bitch.
No one's listening. It's just us, just the 3 of us.
It's myself and Stu and Steve Hasty. We were during at any one point in January were aware of anything up to 6 deals that were definitely being worked on because certain things were in place. And then every now and again, one of those things would disappear. Right, so that deal's gone, it's done. It's no longer being talked about. And if you think how many players were signed in January, we probably had 3 or 4 times the irons in the fire than we actually signed.
Yeah, would make sense.
That we were aware of interactions with the agents. So it's amazing how agents blab. They rock up at St James's Park and they'll tell someone why they're there and who they're here with. And if we get a sniff of who they are or which company they represent, it's very easy to find who else they represent. Yeah. There's plenty of websites out there where you can do it. There's a fantastic German one, Transfermarkt. It's always worth a poke around if you're doing any research on players and agents and what have you. The data on there is ridiculous. And so it doesn't become very hard to nick Liam Kennedy's phrase to join some dots and then say, all right, so he's been in town, has he? Who's he representing now? Well, we've been linked with that one. Oh, there you go. That's who he's in talking about. And so that's where, it's amazing how stuff gets to her. It gets to her from some really weird places. But I can tell you now, when me, Stu and Steve get the same info from 3 different places and we're waiting on a WhatsApp group, hold on a minute, have you heard this? Aye, where did you hear that from? Well, it wasn't from your source. And it's like suddenly, oh, okay, we've got more than smoke going on here. But yeah, at any one time, there was probably 6 deals ongoing where there was maybe his medicals booked or there was something else booked with that name associated. And then all of a sudden it would be cancelled. Boom, gone. So we knew that deal wasn't happening. Yeah. So if you think that was January, what the summer's going to be like, God knows. My phone is going to be on silent because at the peak of it, it was just crazy. I think the other guys would tell you the same. You'd get to the end of the day and you'd have like 64 unread messages sitting on your phone, thinking, "What the hell?" And so but it's fantastic as well because it's amazing where some of this comes from and who is prepared to stick their head up with the purpose and pass it on, which is why we try and look after everybody. Anybody that we get stuff off, we always want to be grateful. And sometimes we get stuff and they say, no, don't say a bloody thing. We don't. And I'm sitting there. But that's why then they come back later and say, oh, well, you said no last time and we'll chuck you a bone here, But yeah, so if the summer's anything like January was from our perspective, be very busy, very, very busy. There'll be lots of noise. Some of it will be absolute white noise. Some of it will have grains of truth in there. And I think the transfer policy will be super flexible. So that, right, okay, we've got that person signed, that blocks off this, and this. We're not interested in them anymore. Move on, next target at the next position. And I think that's how it will work.
Pete, it's okay for you. You'll be on holidays from school. I might have to take a career break to get through the summer. You're going to be so busy with these shows.
Yeah, from July up until the end of August, I will be just. I know what I'll be like. I'll just be hooked because I was like that during the lockdown, the first lockdown when it was rumored that the takeover was about to go through. It was like I'd wake up at like 6 a.m, like looking for updates and like just trotting the phone all day, all through the day. But yeah, it's just I just wanted to add to the just an additional question to the transfer talk. So obviously you talked about it being a very fluid situation with Newcastle's transfer plans, and you've said, and quite rightly, there'll be a pool of players for each position that they'll be considering. But do you think out of the positions that we may look to improve, that there'll be a dead cert that we are going to go all out for in maybe one or two positions, and then leave the others.
Yeah.
fluid.
Yeah, and I think they're the ones that'll be wrapped up early.
Yeah.
They're on bang, bang, and then everything else will revolve around the fluidity. There's the type of target we want and the type of player we want. They'll have types of players, you know. We want a left-footed centre-back who does X. Or we want a, ball-winning centre midfield, but he's got to have a range of passing of Y. Or we want a goal-scoring forward who gets X amount of goals a season, but he has this particular skill set. And there'll be 3 or 4 targets probably within each position, and that'll stay fluid within that.
There's a serious question here from Mr. Penman, I think. Yes, Stuart, Mr. Stuart Penman. Would Mitch settle for us to have as many points next season as
sweet Jesus. We'd win 2 titles with that man, Stu. Jesus. You know what? His bill in Goodfellas on one of the evenings, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody run a bill up like that in Goodfellas. Jesus. And Goodfellas, to give people an idea, is relatively cheap when it comes to beer in Dubai. It's not a £20 a pint place, it does deals. It does 2 for the price of 1 happy hour most of the day. And his bill was going for some, I tell you that. I would win 2 titles with that and the amount of alcohol. I don't know how he made the next morning. I really don't. Fair play to you though, mate. Bloody hell.
Too right. It was. You know what? It was great to meet Stu. It was great to meet Stu before the Leicester game. It was just briefly in the Dog and Parrot, but such a. I mean, you get. To
He's one of the very best, mate.
He really is.
Very best. He
I've talked
really
to him quite a bit. But he's talking to him on WhatsApp, which has been quite a bit, and talking to someone in person is very, very different. And the way he came out, he literally met me at the door. Said hello to my daughter, my mate who was with me. He was just a top guy. Really got a lot of respect for him.
Cheers, Stewie.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'd have to get Stuart back on again with us for sure. Positive Penman. Remember in the dark days, Stuart got us through us at times. Always Mr. Positive.
We all talked about this though, and I think that we've all had our own little moments about banging on about this. As a fan base, we've got this Stockholm syndrome still. That's linked to Mike Ashley that says good things can't happen to us. We've kind of almost got used to it, that negative mindset. And the only way you're going to attract positivity is with your own positive mindset. We have got to be and remain positive. And if we look at what we've achieved this season, to get out of that bottom 3, after not picking up a win in the first 14 games, you tell me good things don't happen to us. Yes, they do. Why? Because we make them happen. We make them happen. And so it really does. As a fan base, we've got to start trying to be more positive in terms of mindset, and we'll attract more positive things time and again.
Definitely.
Sorry, that was a bit zen.
No,
but,
No. I think you're absolutely right, Daz. I think there's a picture there of. I might have it if I just click it on here.
Yeah, I put that on there. Yeah,
2nd of December. That's where we're at. 14 games, 7 points, rock bottom of the league, and now we're looking at April, and it's just it's crazy. It hasn't been done before. And Eddie Howe is, almost hasn't got for me the respect and the adulations that he deserves for the job that he's done. I think he's been
Because the easy argument is to say, oh well, they spent so much money and that saved them. Well, everybody else was allowed to spend money too. That's kind of the rules and the way it works. And B, a lot of those signings haven't been used in ways that you would imagine. Trippier has been out for the majority of the time he's been here. Bruno didn't start the first 5, maybe something like that. I can't remember how many. Yeah. So it's not like we've just planted £100 million worth of talent into the side and it's all been roses from the get-go. Target came to it because he just basically wasn't wanted at Villa after being that player of the season the previous year. That still baffles me. The lad's a 7.5, 8 out of 10 every game job. He's a proper solid citizen. Dan Burn, again, 10 million. Wow, we'll take that all day. Make signings like that. So it's not exactly like, and Chris Wood, the striker that everybody laughed at because we'd spent 25 million. Well, sorry, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
It's you want to mock the signings we made, and yet now you want to say it's the signings that were made that have got out of trouble. I get fucked.
Exactly. No, you're right. If you think you've just said it, Target at left back on loan, Dan Burn, no other Premier League team would have been in for him. Let's be honest. He was playing well at Brighton at that particular time, but there'd have been no other Premier League team that had gone out of their way. And we went out of our way. We had, 2 bids rejected before we struck a deal with Dan Burn? No other Premier League team would have gone to that length to sign him. And then you got Bruno Guimaraes, which you rightly said, 5 or 6 games before he actually got a start. If they'd have said that was our transfer window, forget, and you could probably put Bruno Guimaraes aside because in that 9 game run, it was only towards the end of the run that he actually influenced the games, really. So, put Bruno Guimaraes aside, you maybe throw Chris Wood in there. So Target, Burn and Wood, had they, for the prices that they came in, right, 25 million, 13 million, no, 25 million, 10 million for Burn and a loan fee, would they have still been saying the same things in the media about us throwing loads of money at it? They'd have been laughing at us because we've spent 25 million on Wood. But effectively, like you just said, Mitch, they're the ones that have made the difference.
They've been telling me that Burnley signed a better striker in Weghorst than we signed in Wood, and he's not scored as many goals as Wood. And I'm sorry, I'll still say this again: Chris Wood has got balls the size of space hoppers. When he had that penalty, the length of time he was made to wait, and he would not let go of that ball. And then he put the ball down and hammered it in the back of the net. You think, take that all day long. Anybody with that kind of character. I gather they did a penalty shootout competition to see who was taking the penalties, and apparently he scored 19 out of 20, and the one that he missed apparently was a world-class save by Darlow. and that was it. Nobody was taking the ball off him from there. But that was huge, And so again, who's laughing now? Because they did have a bit of a snigger.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic. They were having a little bit of a go. So what? The numbers speak for themselves. Yeah, he probably could have delivered a little bit more in terms of goal threat, but the work he gets through, and I bet he's a horrible player to mark. He's one of these ones. I bet he stands on your feet and he barges into your back, and you cannot, get anything clean with him. He's got bony elbows, and he's horrible to mark.
It's a 2-man job.
Yeah.
He's a 2-man job, and that's, if you ask any defender at any level of football, the one type of striker they don't want to come up against is a Chris Wood, because he is a 2-man job. One centre back is not good. It is not enough to stop him doing what he wants to do in the game.
I'm laughing at the people are putting names of CEOs from other clubs into the chat as well. Mitch is not going to nod at certain names because don't want to scup any deals or anything.
The Leicester one that was there, I gather, was one of the names in the frame. but I believe she wants to stay where she is.
Interesting.
So, okay.
Okay. I've got a question for both of you, and it's on the Eddie Howe.
You love Eddie Howe so much, Jesus.
Well,
we all love him, but you really love him.
My love for Eddie Howe is not just recent; it goes back over a year, and I think it's been vindicated with the way which he's done at the club. But look,
your wife probably worries, Pete. I think just you're going to run away with Eddie Howe or something.
I don't know him that much, but look, Eddie Howe took us tonight from the table. Transformative, not just in the table and how we look in the league, but also what we're doing in terms of on the training ground, the players, the feel, the interviews. Everything has changed in that point of view. What's interesting is that George Culkin and Alan Shearer had an interview with Rafa Benitez recently, this week, about his time at Everton and his experience at Newcastle. So the question that I've got for you is that in November, if it was Rafa Benitez that took over this Newcastle United team, how do you think we would have fared in comparison to Eddie Howe? Would the transformation been as transformative as it has, or would it have taken a little bit longer? Would we still be fighting relegation right now, or would we be as comfortable as we are right now if Rafa Benitez had took the job instead of Eddie Howe? That's my question to you two.
Okay, I'll jump in first because Mitch's answer will probably be longer than mine. But I was listening to Pod on the Time actually when I was driving to collect the young lad from creche actually this evening, and so I heard that bit as well. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. A what if scenario if Rafa had hung on and he would have then, because there was talk of that he got the call. Would he think about moving? But no, he was going to stick at Everton at that stage. He'd made his decision, and he never breaks the contract and blah blah blah. But and I thought, geez, I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. That we have Eddie Howe, and no way would have swapped him for anyone now. But I don't think he would have done as well, Pete. To tell you the truth, I think it would be he'd still be getting the project up and running. But I don't think Eddie Howe came in and he changed everything. Rafa would have came with a bit of baggage from the previous time as well. Like he would be able to slot in, but I think just the monumental shift that Eddie Howe has now instilled in it, it's just amazing, really. And I don't think anyone else could have done that. So I'm glad where we have Eddie, and I think I'll leave it there. Mitch.
I think would have been out of it, but not as spectacularly. For me, going back wasn't really an option. I would want accountants. I think I've said that before when I've been asked. I was asked in a Zoom meeting by certain interested parties about do we go back in for Rafa, and I had reservations because I just don't believe you go back in football. It never seems to work out as well. It never seems to go as well. Call is burned by the return of Keegan under Ashley, perhaps a little. I do think one of the things we've lacked is organisation, and that's certainly what Eddie Howe's brought. And we know fine well Rafa brings organisation. I think his move to Everton was folly. Real folly. Well intended, but suicide, really. He was never going to win. He could have had them sitting in sixth position and still would have been complaining about him. So, I think going back with him to cover old ground, I think would have got out of it with organisation. But I don't think would have had as spectacular a January window either. I think Eddie Howe pushed for some of that. And so, in a nutshell, yes, I think would have got out of it. I think would still be in a deeper mire than we are now. I don't think would be looking as safe as we are now. I think Leeds. I think that's where we'd be hovering. So for me, no, I don't think he would have done as well.
And this is why I asked the question to you boys. And look, I knew Yano would have something to say. Nobody does. When I put a question like this out, that's referring to Rafa Benitez, and you're absolutely right, Yano. You know, Rafa Benitez is in the past. We do need to move on from that. But the reason why I asked the question, go on, Mitch.
Well, in some respects, it's absolutely right. It's like what Stu said on Geordie's here. Geordie's there the day we were talking about Bruce. He's like, why are we talking about Bruce again? Just let it go. It's not our problem anymore. And he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And same with Rafa, he's not our problem anymore. Very grateful for what he did for it, but going back over it just doesn't help. I know the point you're trying to make with it, Pete, and I get it. Totally get it, because there was a big fervour to try and get him back in, and I understand that. I just think going back to football never seems to work.
And the question, all it does is elevate Eddie Howe, which is why I raised the question. It's because what it does, if anything, it raises how good of a job Eddie Howe's done. It's not really about Rafa Benitez as such. It's saying, look. Would any manager, would Rafa Benitez, would another manager have done what Eddie Howe's done? I don't think so. And not just got us out of a relegation battle quite comfortably, got us out of a relegation battle playing the type of football that we've played. And that, for me, is the key. Rafa Benitez may have got us out of the relegation battle, but the type of football that we've played, you made a great point, Mitch. You look at how we played at Carrow Road on Saturday. You know, that was a comfortable win, but we controlled the game. We played attacking front foot football. We pressed high up the pitch. You know, you talked about it as well. Would we have signed the same players? Would Bruno Gomes have come into the club? Probably not. And this, all it does is emphasize how good Eddie Howe is. And this is why I love Eddie Howe, because of the way he's got our team playing, the way he's transformed the mindset of our Newcastle United players, and how he's transformed the mindset of the fans at this club. Rafa Benitez, in my opinion, wouldn't have done that, and it just emphasises the point. And you know, there's a couple have said. Tony's put a couple of points on there. He's got to be Eddie's got to be sort of manager of the year, or at least in the running. And you know what? I have to agree with that. He should be considered as being manager of the year. Yes, he's not won the trophy, but I don't think there's any other manager that would have got Newcastle United out of that situation and done it in the way that he's done it, in the way in which we've beat teams, and the run that we've been on. We've put together Champions League form in less than 4 months. We've played Champions League form type of football. That doesn't just happen every day. Crazy.
Yeah.
How?
All day.
Yeah, how we trust. Look, maybe we'll go for another few questions, and maybe because it's going to come to light now pretty soon. But a question from Adam is on the Chelsea. He's asking what's the crack with the Chelsea sale, and there's another one from Mike Gent as well. It says, what's Mitch's thoughts on the government putting a clause in that the purchasing Chelsea, it can't be sold again till 2032? I hadn't heard that, but
well, I come back to what I said when I spoke to you guys about it last, and I spoke about it on Amigos. I still remain convinced the government, somebody in the government, probably the Prime Minister, marched in one day and said, right, Abramovich, we need the club off him. It's part of the sanctions. We need to get that club off him. Make it happen. And they made it happen. And somebody sat, probably a junior minister of some description, looked at how it works financially and gone, fuck, what do we do with this? Because he's having to put so much money into it to keep it afloat. Whose responsibility is that? Well, they've handed it over to this American company, Rain, to sell it. They somehow managed to persuade Abramovich to put another 30 million in to pay the wages last month. They're desperate for a sale by the end of April. That ain't happening. How are they going to finance it next month? Are the government going to fill the hole? So is that our taxpayers, which you were already told by the Chancellor, there's debt here and debt there and debt everywhere? Are the taxpayers going to prop Chelsea up in the meantime while the sales put through? Are the government going to find a way to plug that hole? Why would Abramovich put more money into it? Because he's going to make nothing out of it. For him, yes, I know he does. I believe, speaking to Chelsea fans, particularly some of them out here, you know, the belief is he genuinely does love Chelsea Football Club. And that's why he's prepared to fund it at such a great loss and launder his money at the same time. But allegedly. And that's fine. But there comes a point where that has to stop. So how are Ryan going to manage that club as administrators when the money runs out? Because the money coming in isn't enough to cover what's going on. You can't run a business like that very long. That goes pop. What they're wanting in terms of these clauses is to make sure that somebody buying it really does understand what high level of financial commitment there is going on there, and isn't in it to try and make a quick buck of some description and flip the club after 6 months. Because bearing in mind, that's what Mike Ashley wanted to do when he Newcastle United. Was he didn't want to keep it long term. He had a Chinese buyer lined up, wanted to flip the club after 6 months, and because he got his due diligence wrong and missed the immediate repayment and the loan on the mortgage on the Milburn stand, the Chinese buyer told him to F off because it was suddenly worth costing them 70 million more, and so he was left holding a baby. Rain have already discounted. Bearing in mind, the Saudi media group who were interested in buying Chelsea publicly said they were told they were rejected because they wanted to do more due diligence. So Rain want people to spend $2 billion plus on a football club and not do the proper due diligence and not be prepared to sell it until 2032. Does any of that make sense to anybody here? No. Because it doesn't to me. It really doesn't to me. And I said early on that I think what's going to happen is Chelsea will end up in administration and the government will shrug their shoulders and say, well, we tried. and because if you look at the consortia that are interested, the Todd Bowley one seems to be the one that's at least not totally bonkers. But it's still leveraged. They're not going to spend they're not going to spend what Abramovich spent. They're not going to plug that financial hole. They're going to want to turn that into a functional business. Yeah. So that's not going to happen. The consortium that suddenly now has Lewis Hamilton, one of the Williams sisters involved in, seems to be getting bigger by the moment. That just smacks of disaster.
It does, yeah.
To me. It sounds like a lot of billionaires who want to become millionaires very quickly. Yeah. You know, all I see is money disappearing down black holes and no business sense. And then there's who's the outstanding bid? Anyway, all of the bids the process seems odd. I don't know how some of them could hope to pass the owners and directors test as well. Because also some of them involved in the third consortium have stakes in other Premier League clubs already that they've got to give up. And so that all has to happen. It's very nearly the end of April. None of that's going to happen this month. And it's what happens to Chelsea Football Club in May and into the close season that if I was a Chelsea fan, I would have grave concerns about, because to me, the only place that seems to be going is a frustrated administrator turning around and saying, we can't do this anymore. The government turning around saying, well, we'll give you all the extra conditions you've asked for and then some. Why haven't you got this sold yet? Right, pull the plug. And you know what? For Chelsea Football Club, I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen to any club.
Yeah.
At all. If it was the Macklins, I wouldn't want it to happen to them. I'd have more of a laugh, but I wouldn't want it to happen to them.
What Kamon said, that model.
No,
that
can't be. Nobody can replicate that model because nobody's got that kind of money to literally throw away.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing that I don't think Chelsea fans understand is that there are some reasonable Chelsea fans that have read up on it and they understand that it's not going to be another Abramovich billionaire owner takeover that's going to come in and splash the cash. There are some Chelsea fans, a number of them that I speak to, that are thinking whoever it is that comes in that owns the club are going to be able to just fill the hole that Abramovich put in and just be able to throw money at the club. Chelsea are not going to be, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mitch, Chelsea are not going to be the club that they have been for the last 20 years, throwing money around and buying these big, expensive players. Chelsea are going to want to be, like you said, more self-sustainable, which for me eventually takes them out of the top four, in my opinion, because if they've not got the money to compete at that level and sustain it over a number of years, that still then have. Go on.
What's going to interest me is what happens with they've already got Rudiger saying right he's off somewhere else because they can't agree a contract with him. You've got other players coming out of contract. You've got. Is it 40 odd players in total that they've got interest in on loans and partial ownerships of in South America and you name it? It's what happens to that stock of players and what are they going to be left with? Are they going to be left with 4 goalkeepers and a makeshift back 3, 17 midfielders and a striker? And they cannot sign anybody else because their books don't balance and they're on a transfer embargo. And this is a super complicated sale being rushed through at the behest of a government under sanctions, being done by an American company that don't necessarily understand the nuances of how football sales work in the UK, with the Premier League hovering in the background, worrying and fretting because one of their crown jewels is going to go pop. I almost feel like, is there some of this 2 fingers up to the Premier League from the government because of the hassle they gave PIF about buying Newcastle United, because the government wanted that to happen. And we're very happy for that to happen. And I would put nothing beyond this particular government at all.
Yeah.
At all.
I agree.
And are Chelsea paying the price for us being bought by PIF, which is kind of mind blowing, but you just don't get it. It's like I said to you, I genuinely feel somebody high up's gone, get that club off Abramovich. They've got the club off the Abramovich and then gone, what the fuck do we do with it? Because it's just not a sustainable model. It's not a replicable. Well, it is a model you could replicate, but you need some idiot to burn money.
Yeah.
And like I said, some of the bids look like billionaires who are going to become millionaires very, 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 very quickly because the money's going to be burned.
Yeah.
And so it's a cockamamie situation. It's a cockamamie sale being handled in a bloody stupid way. And the only people I see eventually being punished for this are Chelsea fans. Because at the end of the day, in every club that gets into bother financially, it's always the fans that suffer. And it's always the fans that turn out to bring the Phoenix club back. And how many times Portsmouth fans dipped into their pockets, how many times Leeds fans dipped into their pockets. The list goes on, mate. And I tell you what scares me is very much the feeling I get out of Premier League and Football League contacts I have at the minute is that they're very prepared to let clubs go to the wall if it gets rid of the bad owners. That's the solution to getting rid of bad owners, is let the clubs go bust. Crazy. Wow.
It's just mad. Like this summer alone, like we have our own drama with outgoings, incomings, CEOs, sporting directors, new sponsorship. Then we have the whole Chelsea drama. Then you have Man United and their drama and the whole rebuilding jobs. There's so much. It's too much.
There's still, I believe, 9 clubs in the Championship on the precipice. There's 9 clubs in the Championship that have wages to turnover ratios greater than 164%. If I run my business like that, I give myself 3 months. It's not sustainable. The money that was kicked down the road from Project Big Picture still around. That's now running out. So here we are down the road where you kick the can to. What's going to go on now? And so we really do have a situation brewing. I think there's 4 clubs at the minute. It's going to be 5 soon in the Championship who are on transfer embargo as well. So they have to have every transfer ratified and allowed by the Football League. That'll go up to 7 or 8 very, very quickly once the season ends. And so there's, again, because certain clubs can't do business, you can't get money go around within the game. Yeah. So everything churns to a halt. And so it really becomes quite a worrying situation from the financials. Because it's always, like I say, it's always us that people turn to,
Yeah,
that's cheery, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, I think the point that Chris made in the last comment, he said, Newcastle is finally stable, which is great to see. We are stable. We've always been relatively financially stable. Even with Mike Ashley, although we disagreed with it because he didn't put the money in that we wanted him to. We ended up being financially stable, but we're now stable finally as a club because we've got money that makes us financially stable. We've also got money to be able to develop and build the club in the way that we want. And actually, is it a case that it is a merry-go-round? Look, we've had teams that have had money. You said about Portsmouth. We're flying high and winning the FA Cup off the back of throwing loads of money at it. Leeds got to the semi-finals of the Champions League in the early 2000s off the back of throwing money to it. We have these teams that have this merry-go-round and have a great moment and then kind of disappear. And we've had a number of teams do that. And, is that the case where it's potentially our turn now? We've been on the...
Could be, but I was shouldn't be the boom and bust that some of those were.
No.
You got to remember when Portsmouth went under the second time, they hadn't even paid their bloody news agent bills for 6 months. There was the whole local community suffered and people let it go because it was the football club. You've all heard the tales of Leeds and the fish tanks where they filled them with fish, let the fish die, and just replaced the fish. And it's stupid things like that. Just frivolous wastes of money because they can. And so I think if we were to go through a phase like that, we'd be financially much more stable and much better owned and managed. Look at what Chelsea are going through now. That's because that model was only sustainable while there's a billionaire prepared to pump money in to plug the hole. It's as simple as that. I have a huge problem with leveraged bids. Burnley, if they go down, they're in a massive hole because they swap their cash for debt during the purchase. Everton, if they go down, that's another story entirely. I mean, their financials they should have been, but they should have been in bother this year. They just managed to finagle it with the Premier League because I think it was another hassle that the Premier League could have done without. And I think they'd been able to come to an agreement just to make it just go away because it was something else the Premier League just didn't need on their hands.
You nearly feel sorry for Richard Masters. No.
Well, I tell you what, the whole way the game is structured my biggest issue is the FA ultimately have let everybody down. Passed too much power to the Premier League, and they should have retained more of the ability to step in and say, "I no," and they didn't. They sold their soul to the devil themselves, and so you've got the EFL acting on their own accord. Some of the decisions that come out of the EFL, particularly on owners and directors and things like that, is just bonkers. It's the EFL is it's the Wild West of football league administration. Unfortunately, Premier League's not that much better, but it's better than the EFL. And the FA, meanwhile, stick their fingers up their arse and twiddle and watch Rome burn, and that's unfortunate.
Interesting.
Let's go to a few more of the questions. I want to get to this one from Anne Toon Army, which I haven't seen Anne before. So if anyone that's new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bottom right hand corner of your screen, red button, and it's free. And hit the like button as well for the show. Pushes us up the algorithms. Yeah, one from Anne here. And I saw, did someone recommend Pickford or say, this is a few players that Pickford should go to Newcastle. Anytime Pickford gets near Newcastle, he shits his pants. They can't even play him in goal now for Everton when we play him. So could be a different story if he was playing for us, but I don't want him to see him anywhere near a Newcastle team. He
shouldn't be anywhere near an England team either.
No.
His form this season is just that bad. The fact that two managers have found ways to get him out of the team against us tells you everything you know about his mental capacity to cope in certain situations, and that's not what you need as your England national goalkeeper. And as far as I'm concerned, any noise about going for Pickford is just exactly that. It's drivel.
I think it's a mutual understanding that he wouldn't want to come and play for us, and we certainly wouldn't want to come and play for Newcastle United, and that's the way it is. But I think Everton jumped into that deal. They took advantage of the fact that Sunderland got relegated and paid 30 million for a goalkeeper that was never going to reach the level that they, I think, expected. And I think, if anything typifies what Everton have done in the transfer market over the last 4 or 5 years, Pickford is one of them, alongside the likes of Iwobi, that have spent 30 million each, and they're no better off.
One of my blue nose mates sent us just two of them, Delph and somebody else. I can't remember the two that signed. How much they'd spent on them, how many minutes they'd actually played in the team, and what they'd contributed, and it was just horrendous. It was just horrendous. It was something like 2.4 million a goal or something like that. And it was just like, what?
It wasn't Tucson, was it by any chance?
And it might have been the Turkish striker that we've been linked with. And Tunç, and the point you made is we've spent £500 million and got worse. It's like, you have. Unbelievable. It's just, and I have suspicions with Everton's owners in terms of what they're doing. In terms of, well, obviously you had Usmanov, who's now no longer involved officially. There'll still be something in there, I'm sure.
Was he not the money? Was he the money man?
No, the money was Mashori, the Iranian billionaire who moved up there, and he persuaded Usmanov to come with him. They're good friends. But again, the minute I see the kind of businesses he's involved in worldwide, my immediate reaction is he's doing a bit of money cleaning when it comes to Everton Football Club. Their ownership structure is quite odd. Keeping Ken Wright on in terms of the chair capacity, with an owner who flits in and out as he will. They've pump money into a new ground development. Well, I'm telling you now, they get relegated, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
They've lost, obviously, the sponsorship and stuff from Usmanov and other things that he was going to be able to bring to the table. That'll have to be replaced for them, if they stay up, to satisfy the regs next season on the next 3-year period. They've got a lot of money to find. And it whether they go up, whether they stay up or whether they go down, they're still in big shit.
And do you think they'll go down from what you've seen and what you think the fixtures are like in the...
When you've got players allegedly talking about which team they're going to go to next, and they've still got 5 games to play for the team that's in relegation trouble that pay their wages, I would suggest you've got a problem. And Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison have already got agents making noises. Can you fully say that their minds are focused on that? Keeping Everton up? No. Have I seen anything from Everton to say that they've certainly, player for player, got ability, but they're not playing as a team. They remind me of us when we got relegated with a front line of Owen, Viduka and Martins. We should never have gone down that season, and yet we did. And they remind me of that. Totally that. That's exactly what they remind me of. They don't remind me of anything else. I see enough in Burnley that they have a fight. What I've heard about Sean Dyche and his sacking, I don't know how much truth in it or not, but it's a weird situation. But it certainly hasn't seemed to have affected the players or the fans. They seem to be really, sticking together. They played some nice football the last 2 games of theirs I've seen, and they look like they're up for a fight.
Yeah.
So, that's a positive thing on their part. And then you got Leeds, who are proper Jekyll and Hyde. I've seen enough of them this season. Obviously, with the Leeds lads getting into Goodfellas, I've seen quite a bit of them. And I watched their game against Watford with them, sitting as the only relaxed person in the bar because the tension was just ridiculous. Honestly, I was glad we won on the Friday night because the tension in there was just something else. And it was quite cathartic just to sit there and watch them lose their shit, and when you're sitting in the middle of it all, watch it all kick off around you. But it's the very nature that they've got that ability to rock up to West Ham and win away at West Ham. They've got that ability to suddenly stick 3 goals past somebody in 5 minutes. That I think will be enough to get them out of bother. I think it's a shootout between Everton and Burnley, and I just don't like the look of Everton's fixture list. It looks horrendous.
So Everton and Burnley, you're saying Mitch, between. So you think these will get out of it, and I think Burnley play Watford at the weekend. So win there for Burnley would push them the same points as Leeds.
And Everton have got Chelsea at home, so it could well be 5 points the difference with 4 games to go for Burnley, 5 games to go for Everton. I think Everton's game in hand is Leicester away, which
yes, I think it is.
So and that you look at Everton's away form; they haven't won away since August. So you don't really even with that game in hand, you don't hold any confidence that they're going to get the win, and that's the key. Is that
the only thing I see in their favour at the minute was they didn't get a proper thumping off Liverpool. I think if Liverpool had stuck 5 or 6 past them, which I think they were perfectly capable of on another day, I think that would have been Everton gone. I think the fans would have put the white flags out, and I think that would have been them morally destroyed. That hasn't happened, and in fact, they found a way to feel aggrieved about it. That's oddly, that defeat is kind of gone in their favour a little bit, because that could have been a disaster for them. That could have been that could have been 5 or 6 easier than that day.
and the goal difference is already 5 difference between Burnley and Everton. So it's already bad as it is. So 2-0, and I think that's what struck me. So you've got Jamie Carragher on Sky, who naturally talks up whether it's Everton or Liverpool, because he's an Everton fan for one, and he paid for Liverpool in the second. So he's always going to talk both clubs up. And they talked about how Everton did a job and that they look solid and blah 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 blah. But all I could see is that they were just settling to keep the score down. I think in their minds they always knew that Liverpool would win the game, and I think there was a little bit of shock and surprise with how long they actually held on for. But it was, for me, it was always to keep the score down, because they knew, like you just said, Mitch, that Liverpool could hit them for 4 or 5, and they knew Burnley's goal difference was already better at that point in time anyway. And that's the thing, they've got games now. Who's to say that Chelsea aren't going to come and hit them for 2 or 3 at Goodison and knock it down more and Burnley get another win? It's like
Chelsea are capable of it as well. And I think this is the thing. And I think Everton seem to be, once their heads go down. Again, one of my Everton mates over here said to me, he said, when Lampard took over from Benitez, he says, we've just gone from getting beat 1-0 to getting beat 3-0. And it was like, oh God, is it really that bad? And it was. It was a time when they really were not doing well at all. And so, you're right. I mean, that goal difference is going to make a big bloody difference come the end of the season, I think. Can you imagine relegated on goal difference? Jeez.
Not good.
Oh,
Not good.
Not for us. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. I think there's some more questions, isn't there?
There's some more questions. Let's go on to back into targets again in the summer. That's one from Gary. This is another linking question as well. I'm not sure we will get Núñez as striker. So the question is, who do we sign for our new number 9? And Adam asked, what happens striker-wise next season if we sign Núñez at all? So I suppose, on the strikers, the topic of strikers, anyone you'd like to see, Mitch, come in? I think
totally open-minded. I'm not going to pretend to be a font of all knowledge of European football. I'm aware of good players and who good players are, etc. We need, in my opinion, a definite, proper, potentially 20-goal a season striker. We need somebody to really lead the line. We've got that in Callum Wilson, but keeping them fit's proved impossible. So I think we've got to accept that, and he has to accept that. But like I've said before, having a proper number 9 like Núñez, for example, and then having Chris Wood and Callum Wilson on the bench, dear me, options. You could really find different ways to use them. You could use them some of them in tandem. You could use one off the other. There's definitely, it increases the amount of options we have. But we need someone who can get double figures plus forward. That's the bit of the game that we have been a little bit short of already. Is we can do with just a couple more goals. I still think we are going to have a game this season where we go nap on someone. Where once it starts, they just all fly in, Yeah. And they're going in off of Matt Target's backside and stuff like that, But generally, once that striker situation then becomes a fantastic situation. What a great dilemma. Who do we pick to play up front today?
Imagine. I was just going to say, imagine with our 9 players on the bench, you could potentially have our key new striker on the pitch, and then we go goal behind, and they're warming up is Wilson and Wood, and we bring both on. Yeah, imagine that.
It really is a wonderful choice to have. It becomes a difficult dilemma, but a nice one. Is what do you do with these rules? Takes the pressure off Wilson, because I think Wilson plays better when he's relaxed. He's one of those players you can see when he's got a smile on his face, there's no stops him. But he's proved that he can't do full season forward. He's always going to have a niggle somewhere. And so we need options. Chris Wood, if he's demonstrating the kind of job he does, there's certain games where he would be an absolute massive asset. Horrible two-man job, as you would see it, Pete. And so to have those people waiting in the wings would be fantastic, and just changes the whole dynamic of the squad.
Exactly. I think we and I know, Pete, you've starred one of the comments there, but we've definitely ruled out Dominic Calvert-Lewin as an option. No way do I want to see him rocking up in Newcastle. No, definitely better options for sure.
Never rated him, Daz. Even when in England, he's always been a moment striker. He's always had a patch of 3 or 4 games where he does okay, and then has a long period where he doesn't. Reminds me a little bit of a Jose Perez, if I'm honest with you. And it's kind of proven a little bit now that when Everton really needed him, which is right now, he's not producing. He's been injured, but even when he has been playing, he doesn't look like he wants it. And Mitch alluded to that about the fact that they're already looking elsewhere, is that his mind's already on the next club that he wants to go to. And that's not really the type of player with the right type of mentality that you want. We talked about the likes of Bruno, Ganaros, and 1 or 2 others. He's not that guy. He's not the guy to take us forward. And in actual fact, and I think I said this to Chris on one of the other on the fans forum show, actually, is that actually if you put him and Callum Wilson together, Callum Wilson's better, in my opinion. I think he's a better striker, without a doubt. And we paid considerably less than what teams will probably end up paying for Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the summer.
Cool. You had started a few more names there, Pete. Do you want to talk about them or rule them in and out?
Yeah, we just that we could ask Mitch and he can either say yes or no.
Yeah. So first up, Mitch, Tony, did you bring him back?
Again, don't like going back in football. I don't like going back. It's not my thing. I just feel it's not the way to go. And he does well in Brentford's system. Would he do well in our system? I don't know. If there was something about him that Rafa didn't like, that again also makes me wary. But bearing in mind, I'm quite sure, well, we know that Howe does more than just, he looks at the mental side of the game and their attitude and things like that. So anybody like that would be found out quickly, I would imagine.
Right. Next name we're going to throw at you is Jesus. Who's starting to play with for City now and get a few goals. I'd love to see him.
Is he a proper number 9 though?
No.
He plays most of his. Seems to play. I know he played last night up front in the centre, but he seems to play more of his games out wide coming in, and we've got enough players like that. I mean, he would improve the squad. Good God, any Brazilian striker should improve the squad. And it would be churlish to say no, I think.
Him or Gale?
Is he actually what we need? I think is the question.
Yeah, great point.
Exactly. Yep. We'll throw another one. How about Werner from Chelsea?
Would they
That's a shout. Do you know what? If they are desperate for money and there's a fire sale going on,
yes. People said there, yeah. That would be good.
Wow.
Yeah. People have said Mitrović. Would you take Mitrović? We've ruled him out already and loaded.
There was another one on here as well, Gary. With the service we can provide to a number 9, Mitrović should be on fire. Not for me.
Nicely worded.
No, not for me either.
You shouldn't need 7 years in order to then be finally ready for the Premier League. You know, he's had he's had a number of seasons in the Premier League and hasn't performed. And yeah, 40 goals in the Championship, great achievement. But for me, Mitch, you made it. You talked about Chris Wood. It's not just about him occupying two centre backs. It's his running. It's his endeavour. It's his hard work. It's his mentality. The one thing you're not going to get from Mitrović is all of those qualities. He might occupy a centre back, but he's not going to run for you. He's not going to, he's not going to run himself into the ground. He's not going to press. He's not going to do all those things that you want him to do that makes that position so crucial in the game. And for me, that's why Mitrović will never hit the heights, in my opinion, as a Premier League striker for that reason. Because it's not just about putting the ball in the net in Premier League football. You've got to have more about you as a player. You've got to have more. And you look at the top strikers that play well in this league, is that they have more than just putting the ball in the net.
Sorry, lads, somebody's just trying to call us.
No problem, mate.
Oh, bloody hell, man.
Do you have much more time, Mitch, or do you need to go?
Well, it's nearly 1 o'clock, and this is the thing: people outside the different time zones sometimes forget what time it bloody is, and then try and call us at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I think probably best for me to wrap up, if that's all right, lads.
Yeah. Let's wrap up. Look, we'll ask you one more question. So just one that springs to mind was James Ward-Prowse. Would you take him?
In a heartbeat.
Cool.
Look at these goals at the weekend. Anybody who can do that has got a place in my midfield.
Very good plan.
Nice one. Right, so we'll just give a shout out to the sponsors, and we'll say thanks for Mitch for coming on as well. Just a shout out to blackandwhitearmy.com, Bronwyn's clothing range, and 1881, and the range of clothing that Bronwyn has. Check out the website, and also check out, as we've said before, the loaded hat. So, and profits from this sale of the loaded hat go to the NUFC food bank. So, I should be getting my one soon, actually. So, look forward to trying that one out. So then also shout out to shybarnes.com and the range that Simon has at shybarnes.com. You've seen it before. Check it out. The website is the best place to have a look. And to Pins and Prints. Shout out to Pins and Prints, Dean there, and the range of class little posters and pins that are available via Pins and Prints. And he's constantly updating the range there. So that is shout out to our sponsors. And also, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that, as I said, that like and that subscribe button, red button, bottom right hand corner of your screen. If you want to become a member, it's $1.99 a month. Also, that the thanks button is anyone watching it back as well is being activated now. So that's something new you might see unloaded. And then just to let people know the shows that are coming up. So, Mitch, if you need to drop, maybe we'll say goodbye to you first, and then we'll tell people about the show.
Okay, lads.
I don't want to be delaying you.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, buddy. And
pleasure, mate.
We'll talk to you soon.
Anytime. Speak soon, lads. Thanks, everyone.
No worries.
Cheers,
Take
Mitch.
care. Great to have you, Mum.
Oh, it's great having Mitch on. Yeah, and you never know what way the chat is going to go, and it's great for the audience interaction as well and the questions. So can take us in many different directions. So yeah, Pete, I wanted to give you a bit of time to plug away days tomorrow. So here's the poster.
Yeah, so the Anfield Wrap are coming back on for their second away days with us. So we're talking all things Newcastle versus Liverpool and what that means in both situations. Are we going to make it 7 in a row? Are we going to dent their title hopes, or is it going to be Liverpool that are going to get the points? I think there's been a little bit of talk about could we stop them winning the title like they did us a number of years ago? So we'll be talking about all of that, talking tactics, styles of play, all the rest with the Anfield Wrap. Great bunch of lads. Looking forward to that tomorrow. Starts at 7:30. So definitely tune in for that one.
Cheers, Pete. And then, of course, on Saturday, we are back as well for the reaction to the Liverpool match. So The Liverpool reaction will probably be at 8 o'clock on Saturday, so keep an eye for that. Then into next week, we're joined by Paul from the Toon Review. So Paul will join us, and we'll looking forward to having Paul on. This is his first time we have him as a headline poster. He's been on the show a number of times, but looking forward to linking up with Paul and having a few more shows with Paul and talking all things Newcastle and anything else that comes up in the chat. Bit like Mitch, you can throw whatever at us and we'll tackle it. Then after that, we'll be into next week. After that, again, we'll be talking about Man City. But coming up, one to mark in your diaries is because I know an awful lot of people are asking this man, when is he coming back on? So Sean Casey is back on with us. That will really kickstart our summer of transfer window discussion. So we're going to talk transfer targets with Sean Casey. Like I said, you might have seen him say that a few times on Twitter. He's back with the HB sauce, is Sean, and he might tell us a bit more about that meow story. And Chris Wood, remember that one from the journalist that is Sean Casey. that was brilliant. But yeah, that's coming up, and we have plenty more shows, plenty more names. And the boys will be back as well. The boys will be back either at the weekend or into next week. So, that is it for tonight, Pete. Hope you're feeling a bit better now, Pete.
Always good. Always feel better when talking about Newcastle United, especially in this moment in time. It's been an enjoyable show. Fantastic to have Mitch on. But you know what? We had 250, 260 in the chat at one point. We're throwing questions out there. Massive thanks to everyone in the chat. As well, we've had, I think, 10 to 15 new subscribers as the show's come on. So thank you to all the new subscribers that have hit that button. If you haven't yet, just click that red button. Come and join Loaded HQ, and it drops on whenever we've got a new show. But yeah, absolutely spot on. Great to have you all. And yeah, come and join us tomorrow for away days where we talk more Newcastle United content.
Yeah, and I'm just going to answer Therese's comment as well. Yeah, about Adam Pearson. Adam has been on the show a number of times, and he's a friend of the show. Adam is always welcome to come back and join us, and we did speak to him as well on Twitter as well. But yeah, Adam's always welcome back. But we'll bring the show to a close. Thanks everyone for joining us and spending close to 2 hours with us. Even though people are looking for you to do another 2.5 hours more, Pete. But maybe not tonight on the school night.
No, not tonight. Don't expect them to be regulars because they definitely won't. In the summer, not going to rule out.
Summer 24-hour show transfer. Oh God, yeah, it'll be a great fun. I'm looking forward to it. But we must end on the Howe, because Pete, I think you're going to be out with the clipboard petitioning to get Eddie Howe to be manager of the year, and you know what, he does deserve it. So good night, everyone. Howe.
Okay, guys.
Oh.